All right, well, welcome everyone to the Foxwell Digital Triple Whale webinar entitled really Triple Whale Solving Attribution, How Triple Whale Does It, I believe is what it's called. And so this is really kind of a preview of the talk that you're giving elsewhere. Now, I don't want to give away the location of where that might be,
Right.
but this is a preview of kind of a little peek of what's going to be happening soon,
Indeed.
which is awesome somewhere else. So I'm interested to talk about it. Interested to get into what you do, what you guys are doing at Triple Whale that I think people would be interested in, and kind of what's unique about it and how you're helping people make decisions in a bigger way than maybe they even thought.
I love it. Yeah, I can just kind of jump in. And for the participants, feel free to interact if you guys do have any questions or anything like that. We don't need to do the stodgy kind of lecture stuff. If you guys have questions, just pop in it in chat and we can address those. But I guess without further ado, I can throw up the slide deck, or unless you wanted to preamble anymore, Andrew.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think, today is about, to me, talking about attribution and talking about
Yeah,
obviously the challenge that all of us have. And I think, the challenge of decision making,
great way to put
and
it.
how you are able to pull one lever and pull another one down. I mean, it's a challenge. And I think in every day it's a challenge. And especially when you start talking about, a lot of us are now doing Instagram, Facebook, we're doing, you know, maybe Google, we're doing email, we're doing TikTok.
TikTok
So being able to
possibly.
pull it all together, I mean, showing kind of how you guys solve it and how you're helping people make those decisions is a huge part of it for me.
Yeah, I love it. So we can just jump right in then. I will, how do I share my screen? Okay, cool. Foxwell webinar. Okay. All right. So I'll just start out with just a tiny little bit of preamble. So for those that don't know me, I actually wanted to be an investment banker. I studied economics at Indiana University, go Hoosiers. And then I really actually cut my teeth in marketing with this gal you see over here, Steph. She was actually a really big yogi on Instagram. And we did some ebooks together. I got into photography. I did all the photos. I did all the design, actually in Canva and then InDesign as I skilled up. From there, I worked at Whole Foods. So that's the middle picture. I ran all the paid media at the recruitment vertical. Really amazing company. And then I moved on to the big leagues in the agency world. And so that's the third picture you see there. That's Flatiron Collective. Spent a ton of money, millions and millions of dollars, primarily on app install ads. I got to work with Oprah. We worked with a ton of venture-backed companies like WAG, Clutter. A really, really cool experience. And then from that, I spun up my own shop. And then I worked with a bunch of clients, kind of a boutique agency, if you will, here in Austin. And then I moved on to CMO at Triple Whale. So that's kind of just a tiny little bit about me. But enough about me. Let's talk about attribution. So we all know that channel metrics used to be fairly okay. Like you could buy off of them. Now they're pretty much broken. Precision accuracy is all but gone. Directionality still holds. So if something's going up, you know you're doing good. If something's going down, you know you're doing bad. But that's not very helpful, especially if you're spending at scale. So what are the opportunities? Well, before we look at those opportunities, let's kind of look at the paradigms that have shifted. So most people, the old growth formula was essentially threefold. You had traffic, you had conversion rate, and you had customer value. Customer value manifests in either AOV or LTV. Now, this is a fantastic formula, but one of the challenges with this formula is you do get the short-term health of the marketing ecosystem, which is great, thumbs up there, but you don't really know the long-term health of the marketing ecosystem, and you have no idea what the profitability of the marketing ecosystem is. So enter the new growth formula. So what we have is 3 ROAS to rule them all, if you will. And so we have ecosystem ROAS, MER, or blended ROAS. You can choose your nomenclature. It's not important. The formula is. Then we're going to have NC ROAS, which is going to be your new customer ROAS. And then we have POAS, profit on ad spend. And so with these 3 metrics or heuristics, if you will, you'll be able to measure the short-term health of your marketing ecosystem, the long-term health of your marketing ecosystem, and the profitability. All really, really important things. Another way to say it is, as marketers, we care about 3 things. We care about effectiveness, we care about efficiency, and we care about profits. Okay, cool. So as always, we love memes here. We love puns. And so that's kind of where the 3 ROAS came to rule them all. Your EROAS, NC ROAS, and POAS. So what are they? So let's jump in. So you're going to have we'll start first with eROAS. Again, MER, marketing efficiency ratio, blended ROAS, whatever your nomenclature is. This is going to be your total ad spend over your total sales over your total ad spend. And so why this is such a great metric is because it's going to give you the effectiveness of your ad spend. And so ultimately, the way to read this is for every dollar in ad spend, this person is driving $11.52 in revenue. Why it's such a great metric, again, is it's channel agnostic and the attribution has been abstracted away. That's a bug and a feature, and we'll talk about that later. But another really cool thing that you can do is you can pace from it. And so, for example, Foxwell tells me he wants to make $100,000 this month. I say, okay, Andrew, how much money can I spend? He says you can spend up to $10,000 to make that $100,000. Okay, fantastic. I know that this eROAS, blended ROAS, MER, whatever you want to call it, we'll just call it MER for the sake of brevity, needs to be a 10. And so right here in this account, it's cocaine and champagne. We're scaling to the moon. We're at 11.52. Now, once that drops below 10, we know that our ads have lost their efficacy. They're not efficient or effective anymore. And so what you need to do is either launch new creatives or pull spend back. Now, that's not the only kind of story that you care about, because you can get a bit top line watching. What can happen is Andrew hires me, and Andrew has never run ads before. And so I just smash retargeting, and then I start to squeeze a dry towel, because ultimately people are going to have an LTV ceiling, a lifetime customer value ceiling. There's only going to be so much money they're going to spend with your brand. And if you're not bringing new people into the fold, you're basically going to have a winter where you have no crops because you didn't see those fields or sow those fields. Another thing here we have is another cut of MER in the percentage form. And so that's just going to be your total paid media spend divided by your total sales. So the way you would read that is 9% of total sales are being spent on paid media. So this is eROAS, MER, blended ROAS, really, really important metric again, but it's not the only piece of the puzzle. So the next piece of the puzzle is going to be NC ROAS. And so your new customer ROAS is going to be right here. And so what you're going to see here is $1 of ad spend is driving $4.38 in new customer revenue. So Shopify bifurcates their customers into new and returning. What we're doing here is taking the new customer revenue, dividing by the total ad spend. And now you're going to be able to see how efficient, again, efficiency is really, really important. Are you bringing new people into the fold? Another thing you might do, so Andrew has a fantastic business. He's been running it. It's fairly mature, and he has a really good read on what his lifetime customer value is. And so what you can actually do is you can pace off of not only your new customer ROAS, but also your new customer CPA. And you understand your new customer CAC, because Andrew knows that I'm going to make $150 off somebody on average in a year. I'm fine spending up to $50. So this $37.70 is fine here. So these are kind of two ways to modulate that efficiency, making sure that new people are coming into the fold, and your paid media is expensive. And so you want to use the majority of your paid media on prospecting. Now, moving on, POAS, so profit on ad spend. So this is going to be something that is really, really important. It's going to tell you how profitable are you putting the right ad dollars behind the products to drive profitability for the business. Not every ad or every dollar is created equal. So you're going to see that you really want to put behind high margin, best selling products. So an easy way to do this is either grab it out of your gross profit, and then you can do an Excel, or obviously just use Triple Whale and we'll calculate it automatically for you. The calculation is just your gross profit divided by total ad spend. And so what you would see is just your POAS right here. And so for example, on this account, for every dollar in ad spend, they're driving $8.68 in gross profit. Now, without getting too nerdy, the P&L or the profit loss statement has three levels. You have your gross level, you have your net or operating level, and then you have your net. The reason we chose gross is because a lot of times you don't have input on the operational costs. Therefore, they can eat up a lot of the profit that you're bringing in. However, say again, Andrew's letting me run his ads. Me and Andrew are homies. We partner at a very intimate level. We might be spend agnostic and just on a high retainer or some kind of relationship like that. And I want to drive profitability for him. I know he's very frugal and he runs a tight ship. So I can actually create a custom metric in Triple Whale, or if you have an Excel spreadsheet, you can do it there. But you can actually do your net profit as the numerator, and then you can actually see how much ad dollars are driving actual net profit for the business. And it's a really, really clean way to run. But again, I don't recommend it unless you're operating at that really tight, intimate relationship, because you can be on the hook for things that really aren't your fault, where you're bringing in a ton of gross profit, but Andrew keeps spending all the money everywhere at the operational level, and he's yelling at me because there's no net profit. So
I mean, I think, I mean, go ahead,
ahead.
please, to finish that thought.
No, that was it.
I think I think what's important, if we just take a deep breath for a second and look at what we've already talked about. I think that one thing that when we use Triple Whale that's been really helpful for us is I think that many of us that are in the advertising space, social advertising space, for a long time have been particularly kind of spoiled by not having to do the math, frankly. And honestly, I'm not good at math. And so Triple Whale has allowed us to, see things much more clearly and be able to make decisions when we have an account. It was sort of laughable. I mean, everybody has a story now. Like, it was showing basically a 1x across the account on $10,000 in spend from, since Monday or something. And Triple Whale was showing 3. Yep. Okay. So, I think that I trust what you guys are saying more. And I think it's allowed us to have trust in those numbers, to be able to know that we're not just purely depending on Facebook's model conversions, or Meta's model conversions, which are going to continue to improve in accuracy. But they're not going to be, you're still going to want a third-party check. And I think for a long time, we didn't have a third-party check. And one of the things that we do, we do a lot of audits at Foxwell Digital. And as part of our membership, we do a lot of audits of accounts. One of the things that we've seen is a lot of people aren't using a third-party tool, and they're still looking at Facebook numbers, and the client is still saying to them, 4x. Hey, I need a 3x, a 4x.
100%.
And like, not only looking at Triple Whale and pulling it out and saying like, you can't just depend on those Facebook numbers anymore, but really this Triple Whale, you guys are advocates for the agency world. Like, that's a big part of what you're doing. And so utilizing this tool, if you're an agency owner, to be able to, make a case for what you're doing is super helpful. And I think that then you start to get into things like what you're talking about. You start to get into blended ROAS, you start to get into new customer, you start to get into the profit on ad spend. And that raises your own sophistication level, and it raises the sophistication level in the way that you're communicating with your client, allowing, sort of more minute details to be able to talk about being more intimately involved in their minute details of their business, which is a huge deal.
Yep.
And that's something that I think that's a big unlock of how you guys are doing it. The other thing, we can go through this and then I'll talk about some more questions, but I just wanted to frame that up as we talk about some of this stuff.
Love it.
That, like, I think that we talk about these numbers, and I think they can be overwhelming for some, as you're like, okay, how do I go through this? How do I talk about it? But the reality is, like, the way that this is set up and the user friendliness of Triple Whale is also a really helpful point, right? Like, I can design my own custom metrics too. I mean, I can design stuff I want to look at. These are the ones that you're saying, look, these are the 3 that are really going to be helpful to help you scale, which is true. But it's important to point that out, that it's customizable to a helpful degree too, which again allows you to be better at what you do.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point. And the sophistication, I think, is not necessarily requisite, to your point. It's more so giving you better tools to tell the story that's more accurate about what's happening in their marketing ecosystem. So getting people weaned off of the channel metrics is going to be the first step for your quite frankly, the success of your agency. Like, if your clients are still beholden to these in-channel metrics, it's just going to be a hard sell, because they're just not telling the truth about what's happening in the marketing ecosystem. And so that is something that where you can point to these kind of 3 ROAS, and then we'll also show you the pixel as well, which will give you even more high fidelity at the campaign ad set ad level about, hey, I am doing a good job, or hey, maybe things aren't going how you want them to go, but at least you can show them, hey, things aren't where they need to be. And so we're changing strategies and tactics to now move the account into a better place and make it trend in the right direction. Because, right now it's tough. And I'll show you at the end of the presentation, it's hard going right now for a lot of people. And it's not just you, it's at the macro level as well. And so being able to, one, communicate with the client in a really transparent way, but two, show them, I really think that clients care about three things: where they were, where they are, and where they're going. And being able to build a narrative around those three data points should really be your agenda every time you meet your client. And then, quite frankly, the goal of that meeting should be getting them excited about where you're taking them. And so if you can kind of build that mental model with that relationship, clients usually are pretty empathetic. You're definitely going to have some terrible ones, but quite frankly, like, it's hard to find really good media buyers. And so if you are being able to be transparent and hit them with data and build narratives around the data that are representative of the business, it's going to be helpful. Because if you have an 8x ROAS on Facebook and the business isn't making any money, the client won't care. The client's going to ask you, why is my Shopify account not making any money, but you're telling me you're making me all this money in Facebook? You're lying to me. And so having a better, more transparent view of your marketing ecosystem is really, really important. And these ROAS are a bit kind of quote unquote sophisticated, but at the same time, it's just quite, to Andrew's point, like, the marketing sophistication needs to level up because the bull market has started to erode a little bit, and there needs to be a little bit more precision in how you deploy that paid capital, in my opinion. Yeah, great interjection. Thank you, Andrew. And so kind of actually taking that old growth formula. So this was an older client of mine, and I took over. This is when I ran my own agency. And so this was going off of traffic. So he had plus 30% in traffic. Fantastic. He had his conversion rate bump year over year, 5%, sensational. His revenue was up, top line, 29%. Woo-hoo-hoo, I'm getting a raise. And then his AOV was down 6% year over year. Not the worst, not the best, but definitely not red alarm territory. Same with LTV, minus 5% year over year. Again, not the worst, not the best. The house isn't burning down. And then you look at how much he took home, negative 28K. That is not the path, people. And so if you would actually look at this business through the old growth formula of traffic, conversion rate, and revenues, or customer value, which is going to be AOV, LTV, this business looks like it's in a good place, when in reality, he's losing 28K. And so this is why we need a new shift and kind of an elevation in the consciousness of marketing, where you need to be, again, a little bit more sophisticated in how you're deploying those tools and what metrics you're looking at. And so this is kind of over a time where he took over. And so once we started optimizing for POAS, because that's what he cared about, was profits, we were making less money, but we were taking way more money home because we weren't selling $20 bills for $10. We weren't promoting low margin products. We weren't doing the things that just had diminishing economics. And it's just a better way to run your business. And so that's why these tools or these metrics can be really helpful to, again, turn a lot of businesses around. And furthermore, it can enlighten you into, is this business economics viable? Because even Andrew, as great as a media buyer as he is, he's not going to be able to outbuy bad economics. There's a saying that you can't out-train a bad diet. You can't outbuy and have great marketing outbeat bad economics. It just doesn't work. Like, the business model and the economics are going to be foundational to the success of that company or that service. And if you can see that these aren't there, it's not that you shouldn't take the account, but you need to have a deep talk with the owner operator and say, hey, this is a great business, but we need to change the economics if you want it to work on paid. And so that's kind of going back to that narrative building and understanding, here's the data to back up that narrative, and here's how you can do it in a non-confrontational way, because you can take the emotion out of it. You can say, hey, I want to support you. I want to make you more money, but in the current configuration, this is not going to work very well on paid, if at all. And I'm just going to be lighting $100 bills on fire for you. All right. So the too long didn't read. The highest fidelity indicators for a marketing ecosystem's health are your eROAS, your MER, blended ROAS, total sales over total ad spend. This is going to be the effectiveness of my paid media. The second is going to be your new customer ROAS. It's the canary in the coal mine. Am I sowing that field to reap it later? Are new customers coming in? Am I activating new customer revenue? Fantastic. And then POAS, how profitable is my marketing ecosystem? Am I putting the ad spend behind the right products to drive profitability for the business? I'm not just top line watching. And so in those three metrics, and then you're going to bring in your total revenues, your net profit, and your net margin, you're going to basically have a holistic view of not only the marketing ecosystem, but as well as the business health. So now you have all these metrics. It's fantastic. But Rob, what about campaign, ad set, and ad level? Fair points. So again, going back to that thing where I said it's a bug and a feature to have an channel agnostic attribution abstracted away heuristics. The only way you're really going to get, if you don't have the economics to afford the pixel right now or the attribution from Triple Whale, the only way you're going to get that is through incrementality testing, which is totally fine. But when you get to Andrew's level, when you're running bigger accounts where they have a lot of channels and it starts to become a fairly sophisticated marketing ecosystem, it can be really challenging to run clean incrementality tests because there's a lot of confounding variables that'll kind of pollute the data. And so you're going to need something like a first party pixel where you can get that campaign ad set and ad level. Super easy peasy to install. You just throw it on your Shopify store, you add your UTMs and off you go. So really, really important to understand that you can still have success without attribution, but as you scale and as your marketing ecosystem becomes more sophisticated, the incrementality tests get harder to run. They're not as clean, and you will need to eventually move into something like a first party pixel where you can have that campaign ad set and ad level data. Another mental model you can have is you're actually moving the optimization and the deployment into two segments. So this is where you're actually going to become the optimization, where you're looking at your Triple Whale, that's your central source of truth. And then you're going to your Facebook's ad manager or your TikTok, and then you're scaling up or down the campaigns or sunsetting the ones that aren't really working. And so that's kind of the biggest change in the latest landscape of marketing, is that the optimization and deployment used to be in the same spot, where you do both of that in channel. Whereas now the optimization is usually on Triple Whale with people that have the pixel, because they get a better opportunity and a higher fidelity view of the truth using the Triple Whale ROAS, and then they'll go back and deploy the ads and change the budgets at the campaign, ad set, and ad level within that channel.
So just so people understand, so the Triple Whale pixel, this is a tool, this is a pixel that you have, technically speaking, that is a first party pixel that is installed on your site. Tell us a little bit more about that and why that's unique. I think that some people get it. I also had somebody the other day that they wanted a coaching call, got on, a member of our membership, and they were like, I'm embarrassed to ask this anywhere else, but like, how does the Triple Whale pixel work?
Oh yeah. And don't be embarrassed. It's actually fairly technical. So
it is, right? Level. That's what I said. I was like, honestly, it's kind of complicated.
Yeah. So
how much time do you have?
Yeah, actually, yeah, exactly. And PS, that group is fantastic. If you aren't already in it, which I'm guessing you are, but if you aren't, get in it. Best Slack group out there. Facebook groups are dead. So the first party pixel, it's actually a misnomer, or not misnomer, but it's just easier mental model for people. It's actually not a pixel. The reason it's called a pixel or the Facebook pixel is like, so this screen that you're looking at is actually made up of little pixels. Facebook is like, oh man, you know what, a really smart way to track people? We'll actually literally put a pixel on there that tracks you. That's the Facebook pixel. So that isn't actually what we're doing. We're doing a mix of server side stuff on your site, as well as UTMs, and then doing some magic to match them along with a few other technologies. But the higher level is Facebook actually has this data, but they're incentivized not to use it because Apple said, no, you can't track people for longer than 28 days. And you actually can't do it if you're a third party. So what Facebook did, they say, okay, cool. What if we compromise? And so think of it as almost like laundering money. They're laundering data. And so that's the genesis of AEM, the aggregated event measurement. And so what they're doing is they're taking this real data that happened, they're putting it through the data launderer that is AEM. And then not only are they not laundering the money, they're modeling the data. So it's not even actually what happened. They're using that data to then give you a representation of what actually happened. Furthermore, it takes a little while to do that. Like I can't just launder all of Andrew's money. And on top of that, I take a little sauce for myself. So I can say, Andrew, I'll launder your money. That's fine. But I'm going to take 60 cents on the dollar or 40 cents on the dollar. You're going to get 60% back of that dollar. And Andrew says, okay, well, I can't use this money anyways, unless I go through this. And so now Andrew's getting less fidelity, and it takes 1 to 2 days for that modeled data to hit your account. And that's kind of where, kind of going back to Andrew's joke, is that if you want a Facebook ad to do well, you turn it off. Because the next day or two, you look at the ad and it's like the top performing ad in the ad set. And you're like, how is this? It hasn't even been getting impressions for 2 days. It doesn't even make sense how. And so that's the function of that modeled data. And so What we're doing is ultimately allowing you to rent architecture to run a first-party pixel. And so since it's a first-party pixel, you own the data. There's no real way to block a first party, because then the website literally wouldn't load because it's being served from your actual website. And so that's kind of the too long didn't read. It's ultimately a loophole where Facebook, Google, all these people, the reason it's hitting Facebook so hard, quote unquote, is, and I'll show you this data later, people just spend the most money on Facebook, like by orders of magnitude. And it's not like it's not affecting these other platforms. It's just Facebook was such a growth vector for almost everybody that they felt the pain there the worst. Furthermore, Facebook and Google are a bit different in the sense that, I mean, definitely the performance max stuff is getting interesting, but for the most part, Google captures demand where Facebook can actually generate demand, which is very, very different in terms of mental models. And so that's kind of the too long didn't read there, is that we're a first party pixel, that you own the data, you're renting the infrastructure from us to own that. And then you won't be, it's siloed, so nobody else can touch your data. Hence, you can do things that you won't be able to do. Whereas when you're a Facebook, so say Andrew's selling happiness pills, and he puts a Facebook pixel on his site, and he starts running ads. If people go to his site and they don't buy the ads, but they're looking for happiness pixels or happiness pills, and I'm running a site that has a Facebook pixel that also has happiness pills, they're going to start serving my site impressions. So Andrew's getting helped out by other people, but he's also getting harmed by other people. That's kind of where that third party comes in, where Facebook is really sharing your data with everybody to make everybody's ads better. But at the same time, everybody's in competition and everybody has access to that data, quote unquote. Whereas a first party pixel, nobody has access to your data. You're siloed. And so there is some pros and cons to that. The pros is obviously you can get around a lot of these structural issues that don't allow you to pass that data through. But the con is, it might take a day or two for your triple whale ROAS to kind of normalize depending on the volume of the store, because you don't have that other people's data to inform that pixel.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the topic of this is solving attribution, how you guys do it. This is a big part of the recipe of how you do help people solve it, is the first party data. So so feel free to hop on, but I think that's important to mention. That really sets you guys apart, and we'll get into that more later.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to Andrew's point, this is, so the 3 ROAS to rule them all is something that you should be looking at. But again, it's not going to give you the campaign ad set and ad level data. And you're going to run into that. My 50% of my ad spend's working. I just don't know what 50%. And so it is great macro level data to have. If you're running a simple marketing ecosystem, it's fantastic. And again, you can run incrementality to make sure that one channel is doing better than another. But if you do have the economics and you do want the highest fidelity view of your marketing ecosystem at that channel level, campaign level, ad set level, ad level, you're going to need something like the triple pixel, because if not, there's really no way to see that data using the 3 ROAS. And that kind of goes back to the feature and bug, where it's a feature in some ways, but it's also a bug in some ways. Sweet. All right. Okay, cool. So now your money's coming in, everything's working. That's kind of the attribution portion of things. And now I'm going to tell you kind of how to understand not only your customer value, but how you should moderate your acquisition aggression, as well as some other cool things in terms of building mental models and preferences around your customer set. And then those economics there. So the first thing we're going to start with is customer value. So customer value manifests in 2 ways, AOV and LTV. So the first thing we're going to look at is LTV. So the LTV, there's a few ways to do it. Again, Shopify bifurcates their customers into new and returning. So you can grab that data from Shopify. You can do some fancy stuff in Excel. If you're a triple whaler, we do it right for you. We'll show you the first time AOV. We'll show you your 60-day LTV. We'll show you your 90-day LTV. Why personally I like to look at 60-day and 90-day LTVs is because, so for example, triple whale is a contractual business. There's 2 types of businesses really. There's contractual and non-contractual. When you have a contractual business, it's very easy to understand what that lifetime is. That lifetime ends when people stop giving you money. When people churn on triple whale, it's when they cancel their account. Whereas Andrew, he has his happiness pills site. When does he consider a lifetime? What's a churn? If I buy, say, in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, but then I don't buy for another 5 months, Am I churn or am I not churn? And so that's why you can get into kind of some fuzzy things. The other thing is when you extrapolate over a year, 2 year, it can kind of get into some weird places because it's just a long time to predict economics. Whereas a 60-day, 90 days, how much money am I getting on the first purchase on average? How much money am I getting out of somebody in 60 days? And how much money am I getting out of somebody in 90 days? And then what's the delta there? How much is it compared to the previous cohort? And so why these metrics are so important is because you can actually run your business off of that versus yearly or 2-year projections. It just gets kind of fuzzy where you're kind of in a way just making stuff up at that point, because what happens is, especially when you're at scale, is those little errors start to compound and then they really start to exacerbate what reality and what your projections are. And so that's why I really think 60, 90-day LTVs are a fantastic way to understand how much your customers are worth to you. Now, you also might be an AOV business where you want to know, hey, how much am I getting on my first purchase? Fantastic, great question. However, average order value is going to be an average. It's going to be a mean. And so you can take all of this stuff, port it out from Shopify, toss it into a spreadsheet, run a median function, read it, run a mode function. But why do you need to do that? You don't need to do that. Just use the T-dubs. So we're going to give you 3 cuts of data on the AOV. We're going to give you the mean, which is going to be the average. Then we're going to give you the median. So the median is going to be the center of the data set. So 50% of purchase values are higher, 50% of purchase values are lower. And then we're going to give you the mode. The mode is going to be the most frequent value in that data set. The reason why the mode's so important is you can think of like a bucket of purchase values. And if you had a bunch of purchase values in there, Andrew reaches down in that bucket, grabs a purchase value out of it. Probabilistically speaking, it's going to be a mode value or somewhere close to that. Another way to say that, when you're running prospecting ads, this is going to be more close. The mode value is going to be closer to what you're going to get on a conversion than the mean. This first distribution, Polly, she's running a great store. It's awesome. Nothing really to worry about. Looks great. Now, Stan the Seal, he has some issues. A $36 mean, that's fine. We can make that work on paid. Excuse me. A $20 mode, that's going to be really challenging to make work. And so it's a perfect example of using data to spur the conversation with that client, saying, hey, we need to only be promoting bundles or high ticket value items, because right now the mode value is $20. And that's going to be, even with Foxwell's talent on paid media, it's going to be really, really challenging to make this work. And so that's why you want to look at the mean, median, and mode, all 3, to have. Another way to think of it is you're trying to solve a murder. You don't want to just talk to one eyewitness. You want to talk to 3 eyewitnesses and then synthesize that data to understand how much that customer is really worth to you on that first purchase. All right. Now, this is really cool. I won't go crazy into cohorts because cohorts are kind of a really, really elite, intense subject. So I will say, though, this is a really cool thing in Triple that you can do. This is going to be harder to replicate in like an Excel spreadsheet or something like that. This is going to be pretty challenging. But what you can do is roll up all the customer value. So this is what you're looking at is cumulative LTV. And then the next thing I'm going to look at is my 6-month LTV. So this is actually going longer than the 90-day. And these are only new customers, which is great. And so a quick overview of cohorts is you can think of them as getting drafted to a team. You can never leave that team. You only score for that team. And yeah, that's basically what that team is. And then that team is ultimately, and you can only be on that one team. And that team is a month in this case. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to understand what the 6-month cumulative average LTV is. So that is $271.64 for this account. Okay, cool. Now I want to understand what months, in terms of seasonality, in terms of all these things, when should I really turn it up and when should I be a little more frugal and push organic, work on things to make the business better while I'm not burning money on paid. And so what you're going to do is basically just look at what in that month 5, so it's going to be the 6-month, month 0 is month 1. So month 5, you're just going to look at and say, hey, what numbers are higher than $271? And then, okay, cool. June looks great. 296, cocaine and champagne. Let's spend up. Again, July, fantastic. 284. Let's spend up. September, not horrible. We should still spend there. And then October, it looks great. So if you were looking at this in a strategic way and you wanted to understand your acquisition aggression, how much money should you spend a lot and when should you pull back? This is a great way to do it. Looking at a 6-month LTV with a cohorted view of only new customer acquisition. This is right in your Triple Whale account. Again, you don't really need to understand cohorts totally just know that you want to make sure that those 5-month are higher. The cumulative rolled up LTV are higher than your average. And those are the months that you should spend up on. And those other months, not to say that you shouldn't use paid media, but you should be cautious because the data has shown you, whether it's seasonality, whether it's the peaks and valleys of your business, it's going to be challenging to get people activated for a lot of money in those months. And so this is a really, really elite way to look at that.
Yeah, I would say, and I'll interject by saying that we used to use a similar tool in for those of you that use Facebook Analytics. And right, like it allowed you to see cohorts. And I think what's important to talk about this is new customer CPA averages, how they develop over time. Yep. I think that really what is important to pull out here is that, solving attribution, how you guys do it. One of the things is, the attribution side of like, how do I know what's working? I think that it's, again, goes in that theme of it's a much larger picture that allows you as a marketer to see through Triple Whale. So it's giving you data that you might not have been and probably weren't calculating necessarily before. And it allows you to have more informed decisions in what you're doing, which is a huge part of it. I want to have some time for questions. If there are questions, feel free to ask them, of course, in the chat at the end. And I have a whole bunch of questions. Yeah. I'm not sure how many slides you have left, Rabba, but
only a few more. I can fire through them.
Well, then I'd say,
how are we doing on time?
Let's do it because
we're bumping up against it. Yeah, give me 2 or 3 minutes and I'll go 1.5x.
No, it's fine. I mean, I just want to make sure that we can kind of talk about some of the technical things that you guys do, some of the roadmap stuff as well.
Love it. Okay, cool. So now you know when to acquire customers. And then the next thing is what products do you want to promote? So these are Sankey diagrams. I'm going to go kind of quickly here, but ultimately you have your first, second, and third purchase. Those are those big bars right there, those big blue bars. And then you have a product. And so again, this is really important because you want to make sure that people are interacting with your brand in a really awesome way. And so as a marketer, you might be acquiring people that have the potentiality for a high LTV, but they buy a crappy product. You don't want to promote those crappy products with paid media. You can use, they might buy those products, but you should use paid or email, organic, what have you. And so the two things you care about here are the golden path and the golden product path. The golden path is just the most prominent path. The golden product path is just going to be first purchase or third purchase. Another way to think of it is the first purchase is dating, second purchase is engagement, third purchase is marriage. You want people to marry as many products as possible. And the products that people are marrying are the products you should use paid media behind, margin contingent. And so just real quickly working through here, 43%. So 45% is actually going to be the golden product path. So that means 45% of people that bought a top knot ponytail holder bought it again. And then 74% of that 45% bought it a third time. That's a sensational number. You want that growth in subsequent cohorts. It's a really, really good sign. This, you want to put a ton of paid media behind. However, something like this, not the path, that's not what you want to do. So the golden path here is actually going to be 48% of people buy something other, and then only 15% buy the Arissa fishtail a second time, and only 33% buy a third time. And so that's not necessarily horrible. The 33% is double the 15%. So that's okay. But again, this is something you can use in organic, you can use in emails, but you don't want to put paid media behind this because this isn't a great brand experience. Another way to say it, you want people to walk through the most profitable doors for your brand. And this is a really good way to understand that. All right. And then lastly, best upsells, cross sells, really, really important. Shopify has a really cool screen in there, but it's really kind of confusing to use. We have a much better one where you can see the top bundles and then you can actually see the top product bundles. This is a lot of times more verification than information. A lot of people know what to put together, but this is just a really good way to check that. The next thing is sales cycle. You want to check how long your sales cycle is between first, second, and third purchases. Again, you want to understand when to touch on them, when the retargeting periods are, what time to send out email cadence. The worst thing you can do is settle somebody that's not ready to buy. This will alleviate that. And then lastly, let's close with the data hug. So like I said, it's been hard out there. CPMs have been dropping, which is great. So CPMs quarter over quarter. To be fair, this is quarter over quarter. So Q1 is obviously going to be cheaper than Q4, but CPMs are down, which is good. But purchases are down, which isn't great. Spend is actually down, which would make sense, almost 18% across. So we're tracking almost $78 million per quarter, or for the Q1, it's down 17.7%. Again, it's a little skewed because Q4 is going to be the most expensive, biggest spending quarter. And then this is actually how it breaks down, which is one of the more fascinating, where Facebook's still king by a lot. And so TikTok's growing, 110% growth almost quarter over quarter, which is insanity, but it's still not even in the ballpark of Google, an order of magnitude less than Google, which did go up, which is interesting, 31%. And Facebook did go down, but it's still $450 million of spend out of that 570. So Facebook is still the king. TikTok is coming up, but it's still, I mean, orders of magnitude away from everybody. And then
this is what time period? January 1 of this year.
Yeah, it's the first quarter. So quarter to date versus Q4. So quarter over quarter. Yeah, it's I mean, not even in the ballpark. The TikTok numbers shock me because I hear people are spending a ton of money on TikTok, and it's relative. It's not true. Growth wise, it is, where people, you can see the spends being shifted there, but in terms of the absolutes, it's not even, again, it's an order of magnitude less than Google, and it's not even in the ballpark of Facebook, which is really, really fascinating to me. And then one more. So MER on average, it's about a 2.26. Again, it's not a really great representation because they're going to have some skews here with big sales and lower sales, but about a 2.26 is what we're seeing across as the average. So that's it. That's the end. And then we can jump into questions.
That's perfect. Well, for me, I think it's important to point out, like, what are or ask a couple questions, like, as you've gone through the journey of seeing how people are using Triple Whale and making decisions and the process of how they're doing that, how do you think you guys, or I guess, what's the most powerful thing that Triple Whale does to help people make those decisions? Is it being able to look at the ad set and the ad levels kind of things with the triple pixel? Is it, or I mean, it's probably a combo of things, but what are the things that, you have heard, like, oh my gosh, yes, this is so helpful for me over and over again?
Yeah. So there's kind of two answers there. The macro answer is lean in metrics, lean out metrics, and profitability. So people being able to set up their dashboard and have these lean in metrics that they can check daily, they can check on their mobile phone, and they can make tactical decisions very quickly. Having the lean out metrics, like we went through all those customer insights, understanding customer value, understanding what products to promote, understanding AOVs, that kind of thing. That's kind of lean out metrics, LTVs. You're not going to check those on the daily, but you're going to be able to have us take a step back and strategize, hey, this quarter, next quarter, that kind of thing. And then thirdly, profit. So being able to track your profit on the Triple Whale, adding expenses and those things. So those are the three kind of macro things that people have been like, oh my gosh, this is just heaven for me. And then ultimately the triple pixel has really enabled people to not only get insight into the marketing ecosystem, again, like at the campaign ad set and ad level, but ultimately TikTok. So we saw people scaling into TikTok there, where TikTok attribution is really, really bad. And it's a really viable platform right now. And so we're really seeing people being able to scale up, because you might have a 0.5 ROAS in channel, and then you're going to have Triple Whale telling you the truth at 2.5x. Like, a client's not going to let you scale a 0.5, where a 1.75, a 2, 2.5, they're absolutely going to tell you throw more money at that. So those have been the two kind of macro themes. Is the triple pixel has enabled a lot of TikTok scaling. And to be fair, the Facebook scaling works, but a lot of times the Facebook scaling is going to come when you're spending a little more. If you're not spending a ton of money, say you're spending $500 a day or less, Facebook attribution is going to be close-ish. Triple Whale, again, I think it's going to be a little more accurate, but where it falls over really completely is TikTok. But what's also cool is you're going to get a holistic view of all your channels in one place, versus if you don't have that, you're kind of flying blind a little bit unless you're using kind of a 3 ROAS. And then again, you're going to have challenges as you get more sophisticated marketing ecosystem.
So one of the things that I think we've heard is that I think the competitive landscape of tools that are like Triple Whale and Facebook are moving and continuing to move and talk about model data, sort of like like machine learning in terms of what they're doing, giving you predictive outcomes. How does Triple Whale see that? And what's on the product roadmap for you guys in terms of sort of integrating some of that into what you're doing? Because right now it's very much like, here's what your numbers are,
Yeah.
and here's what it is. It's very, it's, I know, I've told people it's like, it's realistic, and
Yeah.
there's not a lot that's made up. It's not made up. Like
Yeah.
it's taking real numbers. And so
Yeah.
I think though, over time, we are teaching ourselves to be better at predictive outcomes, or,
Yep.
like where things are going with automated
Yeah.
insights and machine learning. So tell me about where that is in your roadmap.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you saw what we're releasing earlier, because you absolutely threw a layup here. So I appreciate it. But yeah, actually, we're launching, it's in beta right now for a few stores that are on our Orca beta. But we have a predictive LTV where ultimately, if you shut off all of your prospecting ads today, how much money would you make in the next 90 days or 30 days, 90 days, 180 days, and 365 days? And not only that, we'll segment them off of, I don't know how familiar you guys are with the RFM model, but it's reach, frequency, monetary value. We're using that algorithm with some other special sauce to then look at all of your customer data and then cohort them into 4 segments of VIP, high, medium, and low. And then you can actually export those segments as well to then pop them into whatever ads manager you like to get some lookalikes off of them. So yeah, we're starting to turn that up pretty quickly. The extrapolations is really where it can get really interesting, to your point. And so that is really kind of the next scale up will be that. But yeah, so we have the predictive LTV ultimately is going to be launched probably next week to everybody. And right now, if you are on the triple beta, it will be in your account under repeat customer insights. And it's a nice, beautiful thing that'll show you, hey, if you stop spending prospecting paid spend today, here's what you'd still be able to produce from your marketing ecosystem.
Well, Kenny has a good question about, would you guys be able to pull up MER and new customer MER, new customer blended ROAS across different revenue range?
Yeah, Kenny, you're so smart. Yes, so this is actually coming. So that's why I didn't want to show the MER stuff. I had to bring the heat for Foxwell and his peeps. But yes, so this is actually kind of going back to not so much the AI stuff that Foxwell was talking about, but what we'll do is Klaviyo actually does a really good job of this, but we'll be able to cohort you on not only revenue rate, but also AOV and then spend. As well as vertical. So there'll be kind of 4 attributes that will put you in certain cohorts. And then you'll be able to see what those averages are and kind of where you net out. Because again, going back to running an agency or something right now is really tough, because it's just, there's a lot of macro headwinds. There's a lot of micro headwinds. There's just a lot going on right now. And a lot of it isn't necessarily your fault. So yes, that is coming. And then furthermore, we'll actually be producing a white paper biannually, basically a state of the DTC, extrapolating even more on these kind of cohorted trends that we're seeing as well. Great question, Kenny.
That's very cool. I think when you go through and look at where Triple Whale is now in terms of helping buyers make media buyers make decisions, what do you think 6 months to 1 year from now? What are the things what are the other tools we have in our toolbox utilizing Triple Whale that you can talk about, or what do you think? I mean, I know that, if you go to the YouTube channel for Triple Whale, right, one of the things that's on there is the state of the whale, talking with the founders. Yeah, sure. And like AJ and Max, who are really brilliant guys. And I think there's a lot of interesting material there about where we're headed. I think some of it's predictive outcomes, being able to have modeled algorithmic insights into where things might be going for your business. What are other parts of that I think is cool?
Yeah, so the algorithmic insights is going to be a really big one. Inventory management. So one of the things about being able to match your supply and demand is going to be a really big thing, where a lot of people don't understand how capital intensive DTC is. And it can be really challenging if you have all this inventory and you can't move it, or even worse, you hire Foxwell and he's generating all this demand and now you sold out, but you can't get a product for 2 months because that's the lead time of your distributor, can be really challenging. So being able to get in front of that and say, hey, Andrew, if you keep spending right now at the current rate, you're going to sell out in 3 to 4 weeks. Do you want to put in a PO, or should we put in a PO for you? Or click this button and we'll put the PO in for you. So I think that is going to be a really, really big one, because that's a big challenge with a lot of people, especially if you're bootstrapped, right? If you're just mom and pop, how do you pay your people? How do you pay for your ads? How, like, it's a very capital intensive business, and you get into some weird things with the cash conversion cycle and kind of high level stuff we won't get into. But ultimately, the too long didn't read there is being able to make sure that your supply and your demand are always in equilibrium. And if you do start generating way more demand, we can throw a red flag to you and say, hey, Andrew, you need to buy more happiness pills, or you're going to run out in 2 months. And in 2 months, your lead time, that's the lead time that your distributor has. And you're going to be with all this demand and no product. And then you get into weird places where you have to pre-sell, or you have to, it just gets into a terrible place.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the inventory and demand matching is really interesting to me. The other thing that's really fascinating is a bit of a micro acquire kind of strategy of, you can opt into basically, so once you have your whole P&L built on Triple Whale, you could opt into, if you might want to explore an acquisition and say, hey, I want to let people look at my numbers that are qualified investors that are looking to acquire companies. And then they can give me, some bids and multiples. Here's what people have been exiting for X and Y in your vertical for your current economics. And then let people kind of, obviously in a very private, contained manner. But I think that could be really interesting too, where people are building some really great businesses that they want to, exit from, or want to, have a little bit of a payday. And sometimes that can be a challenge to not only run your business, but get all this stuff together. Especially if you're, a 1 to 3 person team and stuff like that. Like, working through an acquisition is really time consuming. And when you're doing that, who's running your business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's so many parts there I won't get into. I want to answer this question, but that's super helpful to think about moving forward. I think we have an anonymous question here. Is there an integration with Microsoft Ads 2? Do you guys have integration? There's not one now, right? I didn't think so.
No, you can, if you have the Pixel, you can use UTMs and it'll be tracking there. So we have some people running Bing ads. And so your Bing ads will track there with your UTMs as well. But the challenge with that is, because it's not a native integration, we won't be able to pull in the spend. So you'll have to do a little bit of calculations, but you will be able to understand the efficacy. But you'll have to either add the ad spend into your custom expenses, and then it would roll up into your MER, or you'd have to do a little bit of back end math. And that's actually a request that we're looking into, though, being able to add some custom spends on certain sources. So same thing with like affiliates as well. So you can track all your affiliates and influencers through UTMs on the Pixel, which has been a really big deal for a lot of people that spend money. For example, like in the CBD or tobacco space, or things that they can't really necessarily go whole hog into Facebook on, but they still spend a lot of money and they want to track that.
Yeah. That's good to know. Travis, we have one final question, and then we'll move into, we'll wrap it up. Travis asked, a question I think a lot of us have received, and I know, Robbie, you talk about this a lot. What are some strategies to gently help clients step down from their reliant on platform metrics? We've been coached to rely on them for a decade, and now we're asking them to see through the forest. It's a tough pivot. I will tell you right away, Travis, we on foxwelldigital.com/blog, we have a number of resources here, and I'll find them when Rob is answering them, and I'll link them, but of like why you need to shift to MER. And actually, in one case, I think we even give you a letter that you can share with clients and a video that you can send to people, right? Like, here's why. But the bottom line of it all is, we can't trust the Facebook data now because it's delayed. So it's truly delayed, actually, from people that have opted out. From those, it's within the 3 and 7 day window of those that have opted out on Apple devices. That's soon going to be coming on other devices, Android, etc. Like, that's one. It's just not as accurate because of that data loss. And so and a lot of it is modeled data, and we don't know which percentage and what percentage of our numbers that are being reported is modeled. So you can't really trust it. You can use it as a directional guide, but Triple Whale is going to be something that helps you to do that moving forward. So, Rob, your answer to that question, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up, and I'll find this blog post for you.
Yeah, so I think definitely leveraging Andrew's letter. It's a great letter, but ultimately just getting them to stop thinking about marketing as a channel specific thing and moving them to that ecosystem kind of thought process of like email, channel, paid channels, these things. And so that's why I've lost the battle. People love Myrrh. It is what it is. But that's why I actually chose ecosystem ROAS versus Myrrh, because when I was running my agency, it was an easier pivot to just have them, hey, this is the ROAS that you care about now. If this ROAS is hitting, then we're fine. And then ultimately, again, you can talk to them about that pacing of like, hey, because either clients are going to tell you have a hard ceiling, you can't spend more, and I don't care how much money you're making me, or people are going to tell you have to stay within this efficiency band. And again, just have them, it's either the owner operator or the CFO or whoever, and say, okay, cool. How much money do I need to make? At what amount of spends can I have? And going back to that $100,000, $10,000, easy math, then you know that your MER has to be at 10. And if your MER is below 10, you need to cut back spend because you're overspent, or you need to launch new creatives because your ads are not effective anymore. And so that's a really nice way that you can modulate things, but ultimately getting people to think in an ecosystem manner, and then also understanding like channel metrics are just channels. They're not actually the marketing ecosystem. And what we care about is lifting the whole marketing ecosystem. There's that old joke where my email person quit, now my Facebook ads suck, where it's like the whole thing needs to work in synergy and unison. And you need to understand what, definitely the incrementality of what channels, and that's what the pixel will give you, but ultimately moving them away from like channel metrics versus like, hey, how much money is going in the Shopify store versus how much money we're spending is really the path. And then it's your job as the marketer to understand where you need to deploy that capital.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Rob, I appreciate it. I'm going to stop the recording. But for those of you that are watching the recording of this, go ahead and email
there's one more question.
Foxwell Digital. Yeah, go ahead, man.
Travis, we do have a native integration with Pinterest.
So you won't Travis has a question here.
You won't run into any of that with Pinterest. We have a native integration with Pins. So you're totally fine there. Spend will come in, everything will come in on the pixel and the summary page. So you are GTG there. Sorry to cut you off, Andrew.
No, it's all good. If anybody has questions that's watching this on YouTube, you can always email me, andrew@foxwelldigital.com. I can put you in touch with Rabah if you have questions about how things go. But I appreciate you taking the time for this. And yeah, we'll look forward to helping more people. I'm going to hit stop now, but we can keep chatting.